blueberry, banana, peach waffle this morning for James, and mine's a little bit different. I'm having mandarins. And James is going to review Peter Sellers. Yeah.
Rupert the Bear.
He's going to review that for us, eh?
Well,
All right.
I don't know what I'm going to review
Pretty
first,
cute.
but figured I'd just put a mask on there so people don't have to see this nose that's gotten ruined by. Hey, it's getting a little bit worse. I don't know how bad it's going to get before COVID gets over, but.
So I should warn you about the peach. The reason that I left your peach full rather than slicing, because mine didn't end up looking very pretty when I did
you
that.
cut it up.
So,
so there'll be a pit in there, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I took the pit out of the pit because it was one of those clingstone kind of peaches that it falls apart anyway. So I took the middle part out.
Oh well, then it should be.
No, you still see.
Oh, there's still some left in there.
Yeah, but just not the middle part.
Just not the middle part.
Yeah.
Which would probably have some sort of poison in it. What is it? Arsenic that peaches and.
It's
apricots have?
Yeah, a lot of people believe that's actually good to eat. That.
Well, if you got cancer, I'd
well, it's
rather
good to eat it a little bit all the time. That's the belief, is that you just eat a little bit all the time.
I don't believe in challenging the echinacea. I can remember one guy at work swearing by it, not at it. I was just mentioning oysters and my kind of means of handling colds and flus, oysters and oranges. He's an echinacea. And within about a week he came down with a brutal cold and he got a secondary infection off it. And, okay, you know, like I suppose you could say that the fact that I got cancer is not a good advertisement for oysters and oranges, but the cancer would have been working away at me long before I discovered the oysters and oranges. And you know, like at the Tom Baker Cancer Institute, what my source there said, I think it was the person involved with the pharmacy there, they said only one thing to help out the immune system, and that was zinc. And zinc is a majorly component of oysters. I think they were being a little bit conservative there. I think you need vitamin B and you need vitamin C. I found out using high doses of vitamin C when I got a cold, I could kick the cold out after about a day and a half, 2 days at most. But one of the things that happened was I developed a secondary infection. All the symptoms were gone from the cold, but I developed a secondary infection. So I figured it out, you know, like it's a diuretic, vitamin C, and I was going, well, what's it? What else is it? It's water soluble. What else is water soluble? Oh yeah, vitamin B. But what was happening was, I suspect, as much as anything, I could have been picking lots of things up, including zinc, I suppose. But I suspected vitamin B as much as anything. I think you need both C and B for good immune functioning. But I'd rather have vitamin zinc. I'd rather have mineral zinc over both of those, even combined, by far. So I discovered the oysters inadvertently. Pauline's the one who discovered the fact that it had zinc.
Yeah, he didn't know why. He thought it was B vitamins in the oysters that were keeping him healthy.
And there's nothing that says.
And I was like, no. And I showed him a nutrition text that I had with oysters and zinc level and how it was just like off the charts. There's nothing like oysters.
It was literally off the chart.
Yeah.
In other words, the bar chart showed it going to the end of the page, and then there's a little bit extra. The other things that they had, which would have been very good sources, had about what the zinc had left over. It was just like this, you know, at the left-hand side of the page, and then there was oysters going all the way to the end of the page and a little bit extra. But I'm not. That's what was making the oysters work primarily. But I would not be the least bit surprised if the vitamin B was contributing somewhat, small amount, maybe minuscule. But vitamin B, I think, has a. Is this yours or is it mine?
It was off the chair. That's why I put it on the table.
Okay.
It fell off my plate onto the chair.
Oh, chair, it should be okay. I'll eat it. But I think vitamin D. B has a. I think vitamin D actually has a immune effect. I think that's how Donald Trump got over his case of COVID-D or COVID-19. Maybe that's what happened to him. You know, like he started to lose. They talk about long-term COVID, brain functioning gets a little bit haywire. Maybe that's why he ended up inciting an insurrection or trying to. Silly move. But so from the ridiculous to the almost sublime in Rupert. I have another one lined up to review. I misplaced it. It happens. It's a side effect of one of the meds that I take. Slightly, a little bit of trouble with short-term memory. Lose glasses. What I do is I just buy $1.25 glasses at the dollar store. I should call it a $1.25 store. And I just buy. I must have close to 10 pairs of glasses. I just put them in strategic places.
I think it's the $1.50 store now.
Yeah, I think that's what you were saying. It's been a long time since I've been.
I think you were saying it.
Maybe I was just guessing. It's going to be in a $1.50 store. Anyway, the only problem I have is they're fairly fragile, the glasses. So I broke one the other day, and there's $1.25 down the drain. Not really, because I got more than way more than $1.25 use out of them. So pretty good. Anyway, so I've got another Rupert the Bear. I wanted to review it at the same time as this one, but I haven't been able to find it. So. Anyway, this is put out by was put out by the Daily Express in England. I'd never heard of Rupert the Bear until I heard Paul McCartney, maybe even singing about it, or talking about Rupert the Bear. And he would have been raised on Rupert. I don't know how old these things are. They claim here that it's like 1959, maybe? Well, republished in 1959. I was reading that as 1989. I don't have my glasses on. But 1959, I remember that. I finished this several weeks ago, actually. Several days. I should have loaded it. Oh yeah, finished the 3rd of May.
And somebody who had it last had done a lovely job coloring in it.
Had they?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like kids coloring? Mm-hmm. Was it this one or was it the other?
I saw some coloring in there.
Yeah. So now it might have been in a kid doing it in their older.
Oh, it could have, yes.
Older siblings stuff. So
yes,
this
because that happened
belonged
to
two girls, Beverly and Lynn. I'm not going to name their last name or anything like that, but put out by Beaverbrook Newspapers Limited. I think Lord Beaverbrook, as they called him, was a Canadian actually. Somewhat of a hero during World War II. Economic. Oh, I shouldn't have said that about a capitalist. They're awful people.
Why? What did you?
He was a capitalist.
No, what did he do that made him a hero?
Well, I think he helped fund the Spitfire, which won the Battle of Britain. That's where, that was up in the air, and that's where Winston Churchill actually came up with a slight change, and never was so much, so he said, never was so much owed so much owed to so few, something like that, talking about the Spitfire pilots. But, they were apparently Spitfires, the planes, the fighter planes that the Brits were using, were during the Battle of Britain. They came up later with a slight improvement, or maybe a significant improvement. I think they had ones called the Hurricanes. But the key was they were, I think, faster, maybe even more maneuverable than the fighter planes for the Germans. So they knocked down a lot of German fighter planes, and the Germans needed the fighter planes to support their bombers coming over, bombing and committing these horrible war crimes over London, Coventry. I think Coventry was a place that got hit the worst, but they were hitting a lot of places, war crimes and stuff like that. Of course, there was a lot of crying later on the part of Germans, and then after World War II about things like the firebombing of Hamburg or firebombing of Dresden. And what did Mick Jagger say about Altamont and Meredith Hunter, who died at the hands or at the pool cues of some Hells Angels there? He said, when you draw a gun, and Meredith Hunter drew a gun, you can see it on the movie Gimme Shelter. When you draw a gun, you have to open a door. You have to accept what comes through that door. That's not to, I don't know, the Hells Angels should not have been hired for that little gig, but Meredith Hunter and Hells Angels should not have been hassling them. Meredith Hunter was with a white woman, that's what his date was, and the Angels, I'm sure, were hassling him because of that. He was dressed flamboyantly, but again, that shouldn't be death penalty. So, but they shouldn't have been hassling him, and I don't know if any of them were prosecuted for what. I don't know. I think it should have been murder. The guy drew the gun, but I don't think he pointed it at me. Which you can tell. So the Nazis and the Germans, by electing the Nazis and then going to war for them and stuff like that, they had to be handled. They were doing some awful thing. Apparently 29.5 million Russians died during World War II. It's absolutely shameful. Absolutely shameful. The Russians actually lost World War II. They lost, I suspect it was more than 3 times as many people as the Germans did. Now you hear about firebombing of Dresden, firebombing of, but I don't think the Germans got over 9 million dead. 9 million is much lower than 29 million. Percentage-wise, perhaps it's about the same for the Germans as the Russians, maybe a little bit higher, but geez. Anyway, Rupert the Bear, 1959, but I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a reprint. Yeah, I was talking about Lord Be Rule. It's supposed to take place at wintertime, and look at how they've got him trudging through snow. But it is hilarious, trudging through snow there. But they've got, this is a spoiler alert. So they get, I think it's supposed to be a Christmas, it's a reward. But it's around Christmas time, and you can see
it's green.
Oh, the grass is green. Yeah. So it's a little bit like it's a West Coast climate in England and Britain generally. And the first time I experienced the West Coast climate in wintertime, it was Vancouver. And it was Chinook here in Lethbridge, and it was Chinook up to Calgary. So we left Calgary maybe a little bit in the afternoon. Maybe, yeah. And it was getting dark by the time. It was fairly late, I think, in the afternoon, because it was getting dark when we hit the Rockies. Up in you know, like even I think Canmore is starting to get a little bit dark. Of course, it wasn't right in the dead of winter. It was coming out. It was like January, February, maybe March, and early March. So it was Chinooking and clear here. But you know what it's like when the snow is clear here. It's, in the wintertime, it's just grayish brown, the vegetation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's nothing growing on the trees, at least the deciduous trees. But and then we were going through the various passes, and it was scary because there had been a lot of snow. I could see these little avalanches coming down constantly, just little driblets of snow. And I go, wow, this is scary. It probably wasn't, but you just take it maybe a bit too seriously. So it was an overnighter. I got into Vancouver. I couldn't believe it. Greenery all over the place. I don't think I saw a speck of sun. I was there for parts of 2 days. No sun. It was just drizzling rain. I didn't really see rain. It was just kind of like drizzle.
Oh, like a mist.
Coming down. It wasn't like fog. It was coming down. It's very miserable. I like my sun. You know? So anyway, this Rupert the Bear. It's got what it has. I'll show you the format. Oh, they did some nice coloring here.
Yes.
Oh, that's what you meant.
Yes.
I thought you were talking about scribble.
No.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
Yeah, they did a good job coloring. One of the two girls, or both of them, very nice. They got most of the stuff right. The matching, like you can get these forms.
Oh yes.
Yeah, see the forms here, and they got the colors pretty well right. But the format basically is they tell a story. I like reading the story down at the bottom. And then I read the little bits of poetry. Or as the fake poet, people out there, the people who think free verse is poetry and the only type of poetry, they call this verse. It's not very good poetry because there's inversion, but it's reasonably good actually for stuff that's where people allow themselves to invert. So there's a variety of different stories, a few games, and so on and so forth. I don't know if they're republishing these sorts of things. It's probably somehow or another considered somehow or another politically correct. I also found out, and the Jailer Man and Sailor Sam were searching everyone. That's Band on the Run, and there's Sailor Sam.
Oh.
I had to be 68. To find that out.
Yeah.
That song was put out when I was 20, so 48 years down the road. Anyway, Sailor Sam's quite a character. So he's a good guy. I thought he'd be a bad guy or something like that. But anyway, I got I'll review another thing. Yeah, this is kind of a kid's thing. The Metal Men. So not from my youth. The Metal Men were started in my youth. It would have been about 1966. This is about 10 years down the road. Revived by a guy called Walt Simonson, who was considered quite highly in the 80s. I think he was working on a revamping the Thor magazine. And you see the guy actually had some technique. He liked drawing women, for example. He tended to draw things kind of with a free hand. But by the time he got around to doing the Thor thing, about 10 years after this, in 1976, wow, he's getting really scribbly. A lot of people thought that was artsy, and scribbly is not artsy. Like Neil Adams is artsy. The guy has a lot of technique. Simonson had a lot of technique, but he didn't exercise. A little bit like maybe Picasso, only not nearly as bad. Anyway, he could tell a story. I'm sure the Metal Man is considered highly politically incorrect because, you've got, they're men, except there's one woman.
Oh.
So, platinum. If you see how she's got a P there, she's platinum. And you got Lead here, who's a big dumb guy, slow as lead. You got Mercury, who's really volatile. Like Mercury's a liquid, right? So he's volatile. Gold, he's the smart guy. Smart as gold. Iron, he's the strong guy. And, Tin is the weak guy, sorry. This is Mercury over here. I was
Oh,
thinking
okay.
about Mercury's really color. I kind of forgot. But they do have their symbols on their chests and stuff like that.
And so that's how you
It's kind of
figured it
good.
out just now.
But poor old Platinum, they've got a creator, and she falls in love with her creator,
Oh.
and she's almost as unstable in a different way.
Oh.
She's kind of hysterical or something like that. So it's feminists, I think, would have legitimate beef about the fact that there's what, six of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and only one's as they would call it back then, a girl. And she's, like, she's not as together, let's say, as Gold or Iron, who's a strong guy or whatever. So,
Well, at least she's not lead.
I know, like big dumb guy. And Tin, she's not cowardly like Tin, or like really fly off the handle. Like, he's got a bad temper. Mercury does. So, I don't know. Anyway, she seems very nice. And I think does she always want to cook for them? I can't remember, but it's
Because women love doing that.
Yeah, yes. There's an somewhat older person than me.
I love eating good food. That's why I cook. He's just lucky he's nearby, so he gets a plate. That's it.
But he'll say to me,
They certainly don't love doing it.
women love getting coffee for men. He's about, he's not quite 10 years older than me, but he's more than 5 years older. He's just like a total sea change. I cannot, I just don't want to say shut the F up, but it's just ridiculous. It's a different generation. I can remember 1970 when it hit. I don't know. I don't think I would have even thought that even before then.
Well, your mom was.
My mom was she was a teacher before she got married.
And was it your grandma or great grandma?
My grandmother was a nurse, so she was around. She nursed I don't know, it was a neighborhood family. So this was after they moved to the farm, but they'd got some sort of disease. I can't remember what it was, infectious disease. But she nursed them through it, and she didn't catch it. But she was very careful. She was probably using a mask. Anti-mask is easy. Pay attention. And she'd make sure that, when I'm out and I go to the hospital every 4 weeks, and for maybe 3 hours in the hospital, 2.5 hour treatment, something like that. It was actually only 1.5, but there was always set up, and there's a flush. It's more than an hour and a half, more like 2 hours, and then just set up and take down. It seems like it takes 3 hours. But every time I do that, well, even when I go for a blood test, which might only be 15 minutes, I come back, take all my clothes off, and I get a shower.
Mm-hmm.
So she probably had a bath after.
Here is my kind of clean chamber. It's my clean room. So I take off my stuff in there, and all the dirty stuff stays out in the porch, and
you let it kind of what we call cook, right?
Yeah, before we wash it, and then So anyway.
So for me, I don't touch that clothing that I've worn for 5 days. Yeah. It's probably only a matter of hours, but why monkey around? Went to the bank yesterday. 13 customers I saw there, 9 were wearing masks. Like they don't care. They don't care about long COVID. They say that 50 to 60%, that's Teresa.
What it is when you see people out not wearing a mask during a pandemic, and they're not working at a place, they're going in to be served by somebody else. They don't care about the people that are serving them. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I don't really, as far as other patrons are concerned, whatever. We've got the word from Kenny that you're going to have to look out for yourself, okay. But when you're going into somebody else's store or whatever, and you're not wearing a mask, you're not looking out for the people that you're coming in.
Absolutely disgusting.
Right?
Irresponsible.
It just
selfish.
seems wrong to me. It's like my friend who would come over and he'd say to James, "Oh, women like serving men," kind of thing.
He said it. It was not a mistake. He said it many times. Yeah?
Well, and for me,
He'd say it in front of you.
I just thought, well, he's older, whatever. And
He'd say it in front of you, right?
I don't know.
But I think he said it more to behind her back to me.
Well, I know
Looking
what
for
he's
some
like.
sort of approval.
But he's an artist, and he likes doing figure drawing. And women, right? Because, I mean,
Figure
there's a
drawing
lot
women.
of artists that, it doesn't, there might be male artists, and there are, who do figure drawing, and they prefer doing men. Well, that's their taste, right? So, I really strongly disagree with artists in this day and age using live models for figure drawing.
This day and
Strongly
age,
disagree.
since about 1835.
There's been photography for a long time, and they can work off of photographs. They don't have to have somebody in some painful pose holding it for hours for them.
How long would you have to sit sometimes as an artist model?
I don't remember.
Without, like, 45 minutes wouldn't be unusual. Have to hold a pose, right?
Yeah. But
they'd give you a bit of a break for a while. And
but
back to the grind.
in any case, it is a way to dominate other people. It's and it's wrong, and it has to stop. It's disgusting, because most of the artist types that are using live models, they would consider themselves left-wingers. It's not the case.
What is it I say? John Lennon said, I ask you, my comrades and brothers, something like that. It's empower the people. How do you treat your old lady back home? I don't know why I said old lady, but hey, how do you treat your wife or your partner or whatever?
Or just other people, it's
other people, yeah. Exactly right.
So,
like, what happens when you walk into a restaurant, and how do you tip, for example?
Well, I don't know.
How do you treat people in libraries?
Yeah. Like, a lot of the people who work, or who used to work in as waitresses and waiters, they made a lot of money in tips.
Yeah.
And they actually made a really high wage because of the tips. So I don't know about that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're going into a place where they don't normally tip, and that the people working flipping your burgers, they're not making tips. So, or the person who's running the cash register at a gas station, or